What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be going over some wide receiver terms that all wide receivers need to know. So we're going to be talking about some things that we talk about in all of our videos, like attacking a blind spot, what a blind spot means, stacking a defender, and different terms that are going to help your game overall as a wide receiver. So I hope this video helps you guys out. But also, fellas, we are going to be coming out to 15 different states this offseason for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver camp. So if you guys would like to sign up to train with us, check out that very first link in the description below. We're going to be coming out to San Francisco, Miami, Las Vegas, Charlotte, North Carolina, Portland, Oregon, Dallas, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Chicago, Illinois, Buffalo, New York, Atlanta, Georgia, Houston, Texas, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, Boise, Idaho, and Los Angeles, California. So if you guys would like some more information, again, how you can sign up to train with myself, my staff of coaches, check out that link below. Let's get started with this video. All right, guys, so the first term that I want to go over today is called the blind spot. So the blind spot is this area directly behind the DB here when he is in a zone coverage or maybe like a press bail situation where his eyes are to the inside looking at the quarterback, reading the number 2 defender, but this is the blind spot. So why is it important to know what the blind spot is on a DB? That's because anytime that you have an inside breaking route, like a dig, like a post, like a curl, you want to try to attack that blind spot when you are running your routes against this zone coverage DB. So we're going to watch this route from DJ Moore. This is like a stutter curl route that he's running, but he does a great job of attacking the blind spot of the DB, aka where he cannot see. So let's play at full speed. So he comes off here. DB's in this like kind of press bail. He puts the brakes on. But when we get to that blind spot, fellas, that DB is going solely off of feel. He does not know where we are at right here. He is feeling where we are at. So if we can do a good job of selling vertical, closing the space, running hard, keeping a good pad level, your speed is super important in this situation. He's going to have to bail because he does not know where we are at. The greatest part about zone coverage when we are running routes as a wide receiver is that we know that when this DB's in zone, whether he shows press and he bails or whether he starts 5 yards off, whether he starts 8 yards off, his job is to keep everything in front of him. He is probably dropping, like, let's talk on like high school terms, youth football terms. He is probably dropping into most likely cover 3 or cover 4, right? So his job is to protect the deep third of the field or his deep fourth of the field. Don't get beat over the top. So when you're working to that blind spot, he can't see us. And if you're running hard, you're attacking, you're running in full stride, actually selling the route, that's what's most likely to get you separation. Now, can you attack blind spot when you have an outside breaking route? I think it's definitely possible. I personally like it the best on routes like a comeback route, right? So like if you have to run a comeback route and you have this type of look, I wouldn't run directly to the blind spot because, again, a DB in zone coverage is usually taught as well, do not get beat to the outside. So if you run to that blind spot, chances are what he's going to do is he's going to widen, right? But when we have an inside breaking route like a post or maybe a dig or a curl, like in this case, well, if we get that DB to widen, that's a bigger throwing window for the quarterback. That's more separation for us. That's why we want to go attack the blind spot. But if we have to run an outside breaking route and we just run straight there, that DB is going to widen and then we break it off and we don't have much room to the sideline. So what you would want to do, I suggest, let's say it's a comeback route like 15. Let's maybe attack his inside hip. Let's try to attack his front hip. They call that his near hip first, then slip to the blind spot and break it off. So at least we have some room and we're still in that spot where he cannot see us. But attacking blind spot is that area behind the DB where his back is turned to the sideline against zone, is a great way to get separation when you have an inside breaking route versus zone coverage. So let's play this thing full speed one more time. Great job by Moore hitting that stutter, working to that blind spot, making that DB go off a feel, and then getting separation on that curl or stop route variation. Okay, so now this next term that we're going to be talking about today is something called a vertical set, and that is a move that wide receivers use on strictly, I mean, I would say most of the time you're using it on a fade route. You could use it on other routes as well, and we're going to talk about that, but it's where you take your inside foot and you throw a hard single cut to the inside, trying to get this DB to crash, and it sets you back out vertical with more space to be able to operate on your fade. So I like this on a fade route when you have inside shade, when you have outside shade, or when you have head up. I honestly personally like it on any type of situation with a fade route when you have a DB who is in off coverage or in zone coverage. So this move is called a vertical set. So let's play at full speed and then we'll talk about it. So you see how Keenan Allen runs, jab inside. Now this looks very similar to a rocker step, right? right? So a rocker step is something that some of you may have heard before. And in the next clip, we're going to talk about the differences between the two on a rocker step, because this is not considered a rocker step. We're going to talk about why in a second, but let's talk about this move first. So this is, again, it's just to sell, honestly, like you are running a post, right? So like, even if you have a DB who's outside shade and you have to run a fade and he's off, like I'm talking like 7 to 8 yards off like this, you can't just try to run around him. Remember, we talked about that. If he's in zone, his eyes are to the inside. If we just try to run around him, he's going to widen us. So what we want to do always is we would want to close the distance. He's head up with his eyes to the inside, same idea. He's inside shade, same idea. Now, this vertical set works very, very well when the DB is inside shade, because his whole goal being inside shade is do not give up the inside. Force everything to the outside. So you might think, well, why doesn't Keenan Allen just try to beat him with speed and just try to run around him? Well, that's exactly what the DB wants. He wants Keenan Allen to do that because he did his job. He took away the inside and he could probably get hands on him, not get a ton of separation, and try to force him to that sideline. So to give yourself more room to the sideline, let's run at him and use this move called a vertical set. So like I said, this vertical set is essentially just a hard step to the inside with your inside foot, and we are trying to sell post. Now, usually when this DB's off in zone, right, his eyes are to the inside. So this vertical set, you have to like try to get into his line of vision. That means that you got to try to step forward. That means your hips and your shoulders have to turn to the inside to try to get this guy to crash. Now, when he's inside shade and it's like off man and he's looking at us, that makes it 10 times easier to be able to get space. And that's exactly what Keenan Allen does. So you see how this DB jumps? Now we could just get hip. I would like to see Keenan Allen maybe run a little bit tighter to him in this case, just to give the quarterback more room to fade. But again, he's probably got a lot of space to the outside to begin with his alignment pre-snap. But again, you see the separation that we have. You see the type of space that we have. And now, instead of just running to the sideline, we actually have room. Now, quarterback unfortunately overthrows, but again, this is what you would want to do against any type of off coverage when you have to run a fade. Now, how can you do this? How can you use this vertical set on other routes, right? Because you could use it to make your routes look like a fade. Now, I'm going to go back a clip for a second. You guys remember when we were talking about a comeback route versus this example? Well, what are we trying to make our comeback route look like? Trying to make it look like a fade, right? So maybe I run up, I give a vertical set fake inside, try to get this DB to crash, I slip to the blind spot, and then I break it off. Remember how we were talking about that? Where we attack his front hip first, attack his toes, then slip to the blind spot? You could do that on a comeback, you do that on an out route, or hell, you could maybe even do it on a post route. You give a vertical set, go blind spot, he widens, then you break back to a post, if you would like to get more creative with that vertical set. So that's what a vertical set is. If you guys hear that term from me or from somebody else, that's essentially what it means. Now we're going to talk about the difference between the two. So now this next clip, this term is called a rocker step. Some of you may know what that is. Some of you may not. We're going to go over both of those things. How is it different from a vertical set? So a rocker step is, instead of just one single step, you can do a double step. So you could do a 1-2, right? So it's not just one step, and you could use it on inside breaking routes. The vertical set is only good for, like, I would say, like, outside, I guess you could say, like, outside breaking or setting up outside routes or a fade route, right? You can only use it with your inside foot. That's what I'm trying to say with the vertical set. A rocker step, you could do it either way. You could go left, then right. You could go right, then left. You could do 3 of them if you want. You could go right, left, right. So it's more than just one step. So this is the example of this right here. So this is Ricky Parceau. So he gives this 1-2, gets that DB to widen, and then he's able to run the post. So like I said, a rocker step is an actual 1-2. So what you can't see in this clip from an aerial view, he has a safety who's playing off-man coverage outside shade. So he's outside shade and he has to run an inside breaking route like a post, right? So rather than him just, when a DB's outside shade, he has safety help to the inside, right? He's not just going to play outside shade and have just a complete ocean for you to just go run to. He's hoping that you just go run to the inside because he has safety help. He wants you to run directly to his safety help. So what we have to do as a receiver is we have to threaten him to the outside, try to get him to widen, and then break to my post, giving my quarterback a bigger window. So at the break point, a move that I could use would be a rocker step. So again, a rocker step is you want to step in the direction you are going first. So if you were breaking to the left, which in this case would be a post, you would want to step with your left foot first. Now, when you step with that left foot, that's kind of like a prep step. It's preparing you for the second step of the move, which is the more important step of the move. So that left foot step is kind of like, it's not as long of a step. You're not exaggerating it. It's a hard cut for sure, but you're almost like stepping downward. It's inside your body frame. Because now, since his foot is is underneath his shoulders, he can push off of that cut, and you see how far he's able to step with the second cut. Because on a rocker step, when you're using it on a post right here, what are you trying to make the route look like? An out route, a corner route. So that first cut, it's got to be hard. And the second cut, you have to be pushing. You got to be selling with your hips. And by selling with your hips, I mean like full-blown turning your hips. I tell my receivers, try to turn your belly button to the sideline and your shoulders and head. So everything looks like he's running that corner route or that out route. DB widens because his job is to protect his leverage. And guess what? Now we got a bigger throwing window before that safety can get there. And I think you see it at the end of this clip, that safety comes in. Yeah, this is the safety help that I was talking about. But if he just runs, he's running right into that guy. So that's the difference, fellas. A vertical set you can only use off of your inside foot. It looks a lot like a rocker step, but you're only cutting off the inside foot, and it's when you're breaking outwards to start. You could end up doing it and run a post, but it's usually for outside breaking. Rocker step can go either way. You could go out then in, you could go in then out. It depends, and it's a 1-2 at the top of the break. So let's play at full speed. This is a great example of a rocker step at the top to widen an outside shade off man DB to give us more space. Okay, so now, next term that I want to go over is something called getting skinny on your routes. So getting skinny is essentially just like running as tight as you can to a DB. So you may hear me say this, you may hear other receiver coaches, your receiver coach at school say, hey, make sure you get skinny on your route. And this honestly goes for any type of press coverage situation. You always want to get skinny. So this example is going to be a 3-step slant versus a DB who's in head-up press. So when you have a DB who's like lined up inside shade and you have to run a slant, you usually do something called a diamond release, where you attack his outside shoulder and hip for like 3 hard steps. The goal is to get him to open up, and then you slip under him. Now, when he's in head-up press, you don't necessarily need to do that diamond release. What you can do, and this is what he ends up doing here, is you could give a jab fake to the outside to try to hesitate the DB and take an inside release for 3 steps and break. But you got to give the jab release first to keep that DB honest. You can't just take off and run because he'll get hands and screw up timing with the route. So when you take that inside release, we obviously can't just give a jab outside and then just run away from him and go, because that screws up spacing of the route and timing. You have to get skinny. So you have to give that jab, but after the jab, you want to run as tight as you can. I call it hip to hip with the DB. And that's ultimately what this receiver does. So he gives this jab, but you see how he gets vertical. His hips and shoulders get vertical because that helps him stay on the path of the route. He doesn't just run directly to the inside. So let's play it in slow motion. So he gives this move to the outside. I call this a wide step release. So like you see how he gives this little kick with his back foot? That's just essentially creating explosion. It's not a false step. This step is a part of the release. A lot of old school coaches will say that that's a false step. What Ray's doing right now is loading up his hips so he could throw his hip, like literally throw your hip to the outside to try to sell like he is going to the outside to move this DB and just keep him a little bit honest. So now when he pushes back up vertical, you see how his hips and his shoulders are getting vertical. His hips and shoulders don't start to round to the inside. He doesn't run away from this guy. You see how he's addressing or he's initiating or trying to initiate the contact for 3 hard steps, because you have to get vertical on your 3-step slant. You have to sell vertical because we're trying to get this guy to flip and open up his hips to not only get separation, but it's also for spacing. Because like, think about it. Like, let's say this is just like a normal like 2x2 concept. Let's say you're the receiver here, and let's say we have a slot receiver here. And let's say the slot receiver is running a flat and you're running a slant, but you get this type of press coverage look, right? So you're here, slot's running the flat, but you give a little jab fake, but you go way to the inside and run. You're going to be running right into the flat route. You need to get vertical for spacing, for timing, and also for separation. So that's what I mean by getting skinny. Now, how does that apply on other routes? Like, let's say you're running a fade route, for example, and let's say you got a DB here. Let's say he gives this little kick step. Let's say he gives a jab to the outside, and then he throws an inside fake with his inside foot. DB jumps to the inside. Maybe he's thinking it's that slant again, and we take an outside release. We don't want to run away from him and go really wide because, one, we're not getting vertical. So when we go wide, this DB has a chance to cut off the angle and recover. But also when we go wide, you're running straight to the sideline. You're not giving the quarterback room to fade you. But if you give that inside move right here and you go hip to hip with him, so in this case, your right hip closest to his right hip as well, you're giving your quarterback more space, and you got him by a step. It's easier for you to stack him, which is essentially when you run over the top of the DB and he's trailing our back hip. So that's what I mean by getting skinny, fellas. This is a good example of that, especially on an inside release slant route. So anytime against press coverage, you want to get skinny for spacing, for timing, for separation, and so you can stack. Now, this next example here is going to be from Tyreek Hill. Now, you got to take this one with a grain of salt because I think there are some things that he could do better on this release, but he's freaking Tyreek Hill, so he's just faster than everybody, so it works for him. But he still does a key principle of running routes versus press coverage, and that is something called attacking leverage. So I am constantly talking about, hey, you got to attack his leverage. You got to attack his leverage. And a lot of people sometimes ask questions like, hey, what does that exactly mean? So a DB's leverage off the line of scrimmage is where he's shaded, right? So is he shaded to the inside, or is he shaded to the outside, or is he head up right in front of my face? I view that as a leverage as well. So if he's shaded to the inside, that means he has inside leverage. That means his job is don't give up the inside. He's shaded in. His leverage is to the inside of us, right? That means he's got an advantage inside. Or he's shaded to the outside, right? That means he doesn't want us to get outside. So if we have to run a route, like let's say Hill's running a fade route right here, I don't want to just take off and run because remember, he has inside leverage for a reason. Don't get beat to the inside and force this wide receiver to our help. Now you might be thinking, well, coach, he's inside shade. What help does he have? He doesn't have any help. The sideline's over there. That's the exact point. The sideline is his help. If you are running a fade route, an out route, a corner route, and you break 2 yards from the sideline and you don't give the quarterback any room, DB did his job. That's exactly what he was supposed to do. He's supposed to make it hard on you, force you to his help. Now, if this DB's outside shade and you have a safety over here and you just run away from him, you're running right into the safety, just like that post example we talked about with the rocker step. It's all relative, fellas. Just because he walks up and press, it's all the same concept if he's off coverage. It's just a different type of move, right? So what you would want to do, Hill's running a fade route, like I said, is attack his leverage. So you would want to give him a move to the inside, give him a fake to the inside. You remember that last example we talked about, that wide step crossover where you would step with your back foot right and then fake to the inside with the left? Maybe we do that. So watch what Tyreek Hill does. He gives a little move to the inside, a little quick like hezzy step, and then just beats this dude to the outside. Now, if you're not Tyreek Hill fast, you got to close distance when you attack leverage. So you see how this DB has like 2 yards of space right here? Now, he starts to do this inch back technique and keep space from the DB, right? So, or keep space from the wide receiver. He's doing a great job right here. But Tyreek Hill's Tyreek Hill and can run by anybody. But if you're a wide receiver and you're trying to run a fade and you don't have this kind of speed advantage over a DB and he's able to keep this kind of speed and you don't keep closing the space with him and attacking his cushion, attacking his leverage, what he's going to be able to do right here at this point is open up and cut you off. But like I said, Tyreek Hill is insanely fast, and he could get away with just running around, guys. Make sure that you don't make this mistake. So, fellas, if he's just going to sit there like this, you have to close the distance, get onto his toes, and then give him a move to attack leverage. Let's say Tyreek Hill is on the ball right here. You could just give him a quick jab. You don't have to close the distance to attack the leverage. Now, let's say Tyreek Hill comes off the ball like this example, and this DB starts to inch back. I would recommend that you guys continue to attack. You come off the line, you're doing your release, you see that he's starting to inch back, continue to press forward and go fast. So when we close the distance with him and attack his leverage, we get him to hesitate, and guess what it's easier to do now? Because I'm closer to him. Get skinny. It's all relative, fellas. Everything at the receiver position is connected. I give him a move inside, then I can go hip to hip with him. Makes it easier for me to stack and give the quarterback more room. So, fellas, that's what I mean by attacking leverage. There are many ways to attack leverage, but just keep those things in mind. If you don't have this type of speed advantage, you got to make sure that we close the distance.